Hi everyone. The northeast monsoon is about to begin, and during this time what happens is, along with the rains, there is like a flood of misinformation online on different social media platforms and chat groups. In Chennai alone, in the past few years, there have been several cases of wrong information that have been spread in the past years. For example, there was a crocodile video from Madhya Pradesh, which was falsely circulated as a mugger crocodile swimming in the flooded streets of Chennai. And this video has been going on, spread on these chat groups for so many years. Now, what this kind of misinformation or wrong information does is that it creates panic, it creates anxiety, it creates confusion and mistrust among the people. And in several cases, it also results in delayed action. And this is crucial in times of disasters or extreme climate events. In this session, Getting the Climate Facts Right, you learn how to recognize misinformation, counter misleading narratives around climate change, how you can spot and report on these climate issues with clarity. You will gain the skills to produce credible stories that strengthen public understanding about climate change without exaggerating or amplifying these issues. Now, this is an interactive session, so you will need your phones and you need to log into your Wi-Fi for this, because Aditi will be asking you some quiz questions, so keep your phones ready for that. Your trainer for this session is Aditi Tandon. Aditi is an environment journalist and a fact checker. She is the senior production editor at Mongabay, India, where she is responsible for copy editing, fact checking, overseeing the story production workflow. She is also a fact-checking trainer with the Google News Initiative India Training Network and Center for Investigative Journalism, London. Over the past few years, Aditi has been tracking growing misinformation about climate change in India and around the world. With 2 decades of experience in journalism, communications, and public policy, she has worked with organizations such as Times of India, the UNDP, US Embassy, and Amnesty International before joining Mongabay, India. So welcome, Aditi. Over to you for the presentation.
Can you all hear me? Yes. Okay, great. So thank you for being here on a Saturday, and I won't keep you very long from your lunch break, but I promise this session is worth the wait. So today's session, we're going to talk about getting the climate facts right. And before I go ahead, I just want to say why it's important to get the climate facts right. So with correct information is how we understand impact. And in the previous sessions, we have talked about the impacts of climate change, especially on vulnerable populations. So we need the facts to understand the impacts, and then once we understand the impacts, we can work on the solutions. And that's why facts are important. And why journalists are important in this chain of events from facts to solution is to make the information accessible. Like, we have all these facts, we have all this information, we have wonderful research going on, but how does a person sitting in, say, a village in West Bengal, or a young person even sitting here, how do we get hold of the facts? We need journalists to make this information more accessible and make sure accurate information is out there to have access to solutions. Great. So we'll go ahead, and before I get into climate misinformation, I just want to talk about what exactly is misinformation itself. We colloquially hear the term fake news. We hear, a lot of fake news, misinformation, all these terms going around. So it's good to just define it a bit so we know what we're talking about. There's the term misinformation and disinformation. The difference between the two is the intent. So misinformation is when false information is spread unknowingly. So sometimes you would have a WhatsApp forward which has misinformation, but the person sending the forward may not know it's misleading. So it's without the intent to deceive, but it does deceive. Disinformation, which is something we're seeing increasingly now, is with the intent to deceive. So there is a lot of reasons why people would create false information. So either it's for political mileage, it's for profits, it's for creating polarization in which other misinformation can also spread. So we have these two types. In the session, I will usually say the term misinformation just to keep it easy. But just for your understanding, we have misinformation, we have disinformation, and the difference is the intent. So now we've talked about fake news, misinformation, disinformation. What is climate mis or disinformation? So in the sphere of climate change particularly, we talk about misinformation or disinformation when you have information that dismisses what is the scientific consensus. There is unequivocal scientific consensus that climate change is happening. But when there are narratives denying that, when there is a distortion of scientific research, when there's a distortion of data, when there's someone misrepresenting the data to make a certain point, cherry-picking certain bits of data to make a certain point which suits their agenda, all of that comes under climate misinformation. And also a rising kind of misinformation is greenwashing, so where you promote false solutions. So false solutions are solutions to climate change which may actually not be feasible. Either the cost is too high or the scale is not possible. So there are a lot of reasons why these solutions won't work. But corporates may say that, okay, we are going to experiment with this solution, and that's our effort on climate change. So that's a bit of greenwashing, which is also part of the trend of climate misinformation or fake news that's going around. So now that we understand what is climate misinformation, I'm going to talk a bit about the tactics that are used today. And there are plenty of tactics, but I've tried to kind of put them together in certain boxes for us to understand easily. Starting with outright denial. So climate change denial. In fact, a couple of years ago, there was a lot of conversation on how we've been moving away from denial because now there's so much scientific data proving that climate change exists. People are now talking about delaying climate action. But I feel like from this year, as someone who's been training on climate misinformation for the past few years, I feel this year it has come back. Climate denialism has come back, and it's being stated in important platforms such as the UN General Assembly, where President Trump talked about climate change being a hoax. And a lot of these examples that I'll share are for the training purpose. So yeah. You can obviously go and view this later. So denial, climate change, outright denial that it doesn't exist, it doesn't, we're not impacted by it, the world is not warming. All of these are outright denial, which is something that we're seeing now. And something which is more common is delay tactics. So delay tactics around climate change are now more common. So it's not always that someone is shouting that, oh, climate change is a hoax or climate change doesn't exist. Sometimes misinformation comes as a whisper that, don't worry, climate change is there, but it's not really harming us right now. We still have a long way to go, or you're just being an alarmist. It's not an urgent issue to solve. Maybe we should work on something else. So delaying action on climate change itself is a way of misinformation and disinformation. And I've just listed about 4 types of climate delay tactics. But if you do Google something called discourses of delay, that is research that's done on the various kind of delay tactics that are being used to delay action on climate change. So sometimes it will be redirect responsibility, that no, it's not, what about this one, or what about that one, or what about the other person? So in this kind of deflection and redirecting responsibility, no one takes responsibility, no one is held accountable. And that helps the people who benefit from delaying action on climate change. And again, we talked about solutions. There's a lot of greenwashing going around. That's also a delay tactic. There are doom and surrender and emphasizing the downsides. So if we say that, oh, we've gone too far into climate change, we can't do anything about it now, so let's all give up. There are no solutions. That's also a way of delaying actual action or distracting from efforts to actually work on climate change and figure out solutions. So delay tactics are another kind of tactics used by people who want to delay climate action because it benefits them in some way. Distraction also is somewhat related to delay, but I would put it as a separate kind of box itself. So distraction, again, is when you try and deflect from something that you're not doing right. So the example I have here is, so Adani, all of you know about, what Adani does. So from their website, from a campaign, a green campaign that they had, where they claimed that they have been, growing mangroves, they've undertaken mangrove afforestation, put out a lot of these big numbers. That's what is being advertised. But at the same time, they're cutting a lot of mangroves. That's the information they won't put out there. So a lot of corporates, a lot of groups try and distract from the action they're taking, which causes bad effects on the environment, by putting out some information with lots of numbers which are hard to interpret. And only, I feel, journalists or people in the communication industry are the ones who can take this, decipher this, explain this to the public, that it's a tactic. Distraction is a tactic, and how we can be aware of it. And the fourth box, I would say, is discredit. That's also a tactic where we see a lot of these smear campaigns against environmentalists, against activists, against probably scientists also now, especially in North America. We see a lot of these smear campaigns, a lot of discrediting people's work as a way to subdue action again. So put down actions, threaten people, scare people. So discrediting people who are actually taking action is also a tactic to delay climate action. So now that we got all these tactics, we can switch slides, and we're going to try and guess a few of the myths and facts that are out there. And for this, it would be good if you have your phone and log into menti.com, or not even log into it, just go to menti.com and enter this code, or you can use the QR code. So I'll give it a few seconds until you get in there. Okay, great. So I think a lot of people have managed to get in. Okay, so the first question, there are 3 options. I'd like you to pick the fact. Like, what is true? So the 3 statements, one is about climate is always changing, today is no different, the Earth will bounce back. The second statement is the Earth's climate has changed before, but never at the pace that it is changing now. And the third option is both the statements are wrong, it's something else altogether. Okay, so we've got an overwhelming amount of answers talking about the second option as the fact. Let's see. Yeah, so, okay, I'm not able to press enter here, but the second answer is the fact, so most of you have got it wrong. And while climate has always been changing, sorry? Yes, yes, most of them got it right. So most of them did get it right, and that is the correct answer as well. So scientists have established that the pace of change of climate has not been the same before. So, things that were taking maybe millions of years to happen are now happening in a few decades. So climate change is happening at a faster pace than ever before, so it is problematic. Okay, next question. Pick the fact from these three options. Yeah, so a lot of, climate scientists, most climate scientists say that climate change does exist. Some are saying that it is a hoax, and we doubt whether scientists even know what they're talking about. Or it's just a conspiracy for the beauty industry to sell sunscreen, maybe. Yeah. Again, most people agree with the first point, which is also the correct answer. And I am interested in talking to the people who picked the second and third point. I'd love to get your opinions on why you think so. Maybe there is data we don't know. It would be good to find out. So yeah, there is overwhelming scientific consensus that there's human created global warming. This is proven by 99% of the scientists, or even 100% of the scientists agree that climate change exists. So whenever we see denial of climate change, it's, as journalists, we put out, there's so much of information that agrees that climate change exists, scientific information that's proven, all of that. So there is information that exists to counter the denial of climate change. The laws of science don't care about your politics, so I just want. Okay, the third one, we hear this a lot in, a lot of big multi-country platforms where China and India are the biggest polluters. They are responsible for climate change, so China and India need to take the responsibility. The US is responsible for climate change because historically their emissions have been highest. Or global south countries have the maximum population, so global south is responsible for action on climate change. Okay, so a lot of people have again selected the second answer, which is the right answer. Right in the sense of, while China is, and India also, we are the top two, polluters at the moment. Climate change takes into account historical data. So climate change happens over like 3 decades. So when you look at historical data or long-term data, US is the biggest polluter in terms of historical emissions. So when we are talking about the impact of climate change and countries polluting, it's important to take current data, historical data, per capita data, and interpret it together instead of cherry picking one type of data and saying, okay, China and India, you're responsible. And the last one, carbon dioxide is good for, like plants breathe in carbon dioxide. We've all learned that in school. So should we be emitting more carbon dioxide for the plants to thrive and trees to thrive? Possibly. 4 people agree, so. It's fine. Great. It's good that people are selecting different answers, whether knowingly or unknowingly. It's great. So yeah, most people agree that It is the third answer, and because the amount of carbon dioxide that is going out in the atmosphere is not the amount that plants need to thrive or trees need to thrive. So it's the quantity of carbon dioxide that's in question here. So we can go back to the slides. And the point I wanted to make through this is that these are very common myths or common kind of topics that people who are discrediting climate action will take up. You will, if you, in fact, I've not shown that many examples here, but if you Google about plants needing carbon dioxide, so climate change is good, carbon emissions are good, you will find a shocking number of examples of leading people, say, in governmental positions, saying that, people who claim to be scientists but are not scientists saying that, and in fact, even as in the past year, for example, there have been people in the United States government who have given interviews saying that. So all of this in a session like this, it feels fun and great, and we all know the right answer and everything, but these are actual statements being put out there. And we are maybe a little more aware, a group of aware people, we understand a little bit of climate change, but imagine these bits of information go out as WhatsApp messages, say, to my grandmother or to anyone's grandmother. They're going to believe it. It's come from what they think is a credible source, and they don't have enough information like what we probably do to decipher one from the other. So these statements are out there being made by figures in authority and being spread in spaces that people consume information. Okay, so we went through these. So now the point comes is, what can we all do? Journalists, what can we as journalists do about this? So the first thing before misinformation even hits is pre-bunking. So you may have heard the term inoculation when we had the COVID pandemic, where you inoculate people against the virus so that they don't get the virus. Now imagine misinformation as the virus, and how do we inoculate people against that virus, right? And pre-bunking means before the misinformation hits, you're putting out a lot of information, good information. You're filling all the channels of information with good, accurate information, with research, with facts. Some of the ways to do that is, you can have fact-based stories, so where we reiterate what is the scientific consensus. And I've given examples from Monga Bay, India, to show that this is actually stories that we are doing, which anyone who's working in journalism can do. So putting out fact-based stories, reiterating what scientists say, explaining the tactics of misinformation. So I've used the term greenwashing a few times. We did an explainer on what greenwashing is, so that when someone is hit with that type of misinformation tactic, they can identify, because they said, oh, I read this explainer in Monga Bay, I know what it means, so when I see it, I know that this is false information. And we highlight good sources through interviews, through commentaries, and I've taken the example of Dr. Rajivan here, whom we interviewed, because I think it's important in this time of information overload, it's hard to decipher who's an accurate source, who's not an accurate source. So it's important to put out these interviews, commentaries, all of these to highlight who are good sources of information that we should trust. Another one, after misinformation hits, what do you do? Because you can't stop misinformation. We've seen that. It just keeps flooding all platforms. And I'm sorry, a picture of a sandwich before lunch is probably getting teased, but yeah, it's what we call a truth sandwich. So when misinformation hits, and you know that this is wrong information, what do you do as a journalist? The steps to take, this is the best way to present your fact check, is to start with the fact. So a lot of, some publications, you'll see they start with the misleading narrative. But the problem with that is if someone doesn't read your whole story, they may not know that there is a fact in there. So this goes back to your basic style of reporting, where you put the most important information up first, you put the fact up first. Then you give a warning that there is going to be a myth that I'm going to talk about next. Then you state the myth, and then again the fact. So it's a truth sandwich, and it's a proven way to fact check, which is, an effective way to fact check misinformation. And this is an example. I know there's a lot of text on screen, but this is a story by Associated Press that you can go read. And it is after President Trump's, speech at the UN General Assembly, where he did call climate change a hoax. So that was a widely reported story, and it was reported in many ways. So it would be a good exercise to actually go and see what are the different ways the story was reported in. But this is one of the ways that use the truth sandwich tactic. So they stated the fact up front. Then they gave a warning that there was a speech which actually didn't stick to the facts, so there is something suspicious out there. Then it talked about the myth. It talked about what exactly was said in the speech, and then again, it ended the sandwich with a fact, that what is actually the fact. So truth sandwich is a good way to tackle misinformation after it hits. So you have pre-bunking, you have truth sandwich, and continuing after misinformation hits. So when misinformation hits, we have the truth sandwich, we fact check. But your work doesn't stop there as a journalist. Climate change reporting can continue through the year. It's not only when a disaster happens or when some misinformation is put out there. You have to repeat the facts, you have to add context to the facts. So when misinformation occurs around climate change, you can put out a quick fact check story, and then maybe some weeks later, do a deeper story, adding context, adding more interviews, and build climate literacy. So one thing I want to point out here is I spoke about all these tactics of climate change, about delay, distraction, but in India, a lot of misinformation, I would call it. So there is not the intent to deceive, but it just does happen because of poor climate literacy. People may not understand climate change enough to be able to understand what is the fact or understand the nuances of it. So through our reporting, I think it's important to also build climate literacy, to build the understanding of climate change, interpreting the science, and making it accessible to people. That's also part of journalism. So make fact-checking a part of your reporting workflow. So we do have fact-checkers as a separate job role as well, but fact-checking is part of every journalist's workflow. And I would go back to the basics of journalism that you study, probably you've studied also at ACJ. The basics are that you need to verify the information, you need to have accurate information, you need to speak to multiple sources and get quotes. These are the basics of reporting. The basics of reporting are the basics of fact-checking as well. So I've just made a list of the various things you can do as part of reporting. Of course, the first and the most important is check your source. When you're reporting, this sounds like a very, basic kind of piece of information, but most misinformation spreads because people have not checked the source. So either they're relying only on a single source. They often, I've seen news articles relying only on a Facebook post, and it has been, kind of debunked after 3 or 4 days, but in that much time that news article has spread, and it's based only on a Facebook post. So check the credentials of your source. Do they have the expertise to talk about what you are asking them? So just because someone is a scientist in, say, in health, can you ask them about technology? Maybe you can, maybe they have done research, but can you ask them about AI? maybe you can. But if they haven't done that research, it's important then to find the best expert for your story. Again, don't rely on a single source. This is also basics of reporting that apply in fact-checking. Review your numbers, data, methodology. This often happens when we're talking about year-on-year surveys, like climate change surveys or even wildlife surveys. Methodology changes, technology improves the surveys, so your data or your results will also change year-on-year. So bringing that context in is important to put out there. And beware of predatory journals. This, again, is a basic of reporting. So there are, we keep saying trust the science, but there are also predatory scientific journals which are not authentic journals. They are, and we could go another half an hour explaining what is a predatory journal, but I think you can find that information easily. But that's something to be aware of, that there exist journals which do not have peer-reviewed scientific information. So make sure you access the right journal, the right expert, and ensure you're correctly attributing an extreme weather event to climate change. So climate attribution itself is a whole science where scientists are studying whether a particular extreme weather event is because of climate change or not. And I'll recommend this website called World Weather Attribution, which has scientists looking at immediate events to see if they are related to climate change or not, because not every extreme weather event is a climate change event. And monitor calendar of events, so closer to bigger events such as the COP, which is coming up later this year, or any climate conferences, major climate conferences, closer to election time, you will see a spike in misinformation. So that's the time to keep your eyes open for what is the kind of misinformation and start pre-bunking before you get to that point. Conspiracy theories, again, there are a lot of these floating around, and it's ideal to watch out, especially when, few ways to identify it is when it is sent from an unknown source, when the language used is either alarming or it is written in a poor manner, and when you can't verify that information. And I'll just end with saying that it's also important to report the uncertainties when you're reporting science, right? Especially climate science. As more research comes in, information develops. I think the COVID pandemic was a good example of that. What we knew in 2020 or 2019 versus what we know in 2025 about COVID is vastly different because science has evolved in that much time. So it is important to report the uncertainties, that this is the information we have now and it is a developing situation. Things may change. And yeah, if you can't verify something, don't report it, is my suggestion. Great.
Thank you so much, Aditi, for that very insightful session and for giving examples from stories. And for mainly, I really liked the tactics of delay. That was very new. And how we can pre-bunk misinformation before it happens and during misinformation, and the tricks and suggestions for post-misinformation, how we can keep the public informed with context. All of this was very useful. Thank you so much. And while we collect online questions and questions from the participants, I just had one question to ask you. Do you think that in the newsrooms, because of the need to publish fast, do you think there are room for errors because of that? Is that a pressure due to which a lot of times we miss the facts?
Yes, so I think, so I have a group of other people who are working in the fact-checking community. So we have a group, and even within that group, there are people who have, despite being trained in fact-checking and everything, have published misleading information. So for example, if there are floods in Chennai, they've got a video of a flood in Mexico and published that as floods in Chennai. And they say the number one reason for them making that mistake is the deadline. They want to do it as fast as possible, and they want to put out the information. And since everyone else is doing that already, they don't want to fall behind. So they're like, we'll put it out and then we'll figure later how we can kind of, retract it if needed. But by then, that video of whichever channel it is has spread across WhatsApp and other platforms, and your retraction may not go out there as fast, or on the same platform. So yes, time sensitivity is an important factor where a lot of misinformation happens in newsrooms. But I think being aware and knowing tactics, right? So if someone is aware that, okay, now a flood has happened, there are going to be a lot of misleading videos coming about, let me be aware. As soon as a video comes, you ask what is the source. It takes hardly a minute. If you can't find the source, I think it's important for organizations and editors also to take that call, that if we can't verify something, maybe we shouldn't share it. It's okay if 3 other people are sharing it, but we haven't been able to verify it, so let's not share it. And I think people worry that it'll make us seem like we are not, on top of things, but I think it makes people trust you more when you are able to say that we weren't able to verify, hence we didn't share, versus someone who shares and then retracts it. I think trust is more important than speed in many cases. Speed is also important in journalism, but trust is also important.
Thank you so much for that brilliant answers.
Good afternoon, I'm Aditya from ACJ. I wanted to get on your views on how bad corporate greenwashing is in the Indian context. Especially, I wanted to know what are the loopholes in the prevention and regulation of greenwashing that let this happen? And in your purview, do you know of any thing the relevant authorities are doing to address this?
Yeah, so I'll answer your last question first, because very recently there were guidelines been put out about preventing greenwashing in advertising. So there were guidelines put out by the government in collaboration with ASCI, which is the Advertising Council of India. So how to prevent greenwashing in advertisements was, the guidelines have just been put out, maybe a year or 2 ago. But that also then answers your earlier question that because the guidelines were put out so late, there was just a free hand for people to, make these calls and greenwash their way through, to sell their product or their service. And there has been research that when consumers see that something, or they see the words green or eco-friendly, they are more inclined to buy it. So I think companies probably did that survey and research well before people who are putting out guidelines did it and decided to tap in on that. So greenwashing has been around for a while, I would say. In India, there is greenwashing by bigger organizations, but I still feel it's not to the scale that it is, say, in North America, in UK or Europe. In India, a lot of the climate misinformation, like I mentioned, is because of low climate literacy or low understanding about climate change. Not to say that there isn't greenwashing, but if you compare it to, say, US or Europe or something, it is less than those countries.
I have a question that that news media companies are also part of the industries. So, and they generate a lot of revenue, and they do also do greenwashing, right? So can you elaborate on how news media companies are the part of that? They instruct us that we are not supposed to do this, but still they are doing it.
So before, I would like to ask you, do you think news media is greenwashing? In what way, if you could explain?
Ma'am, if we say that, yes, some of the news organizations do organize the conclaves and all. They are part of the greenwashing as well, I guess.
Yeah, so greenwashing is basically when a company puts out information about the right, like green things they're doing, while actually not having a sustainable impact. So you're saying that if a media company is organizing a conclave on green issues, but they are themselves not doing any sustainability actions,
Yes.
yeah, that probably does exist. I don't have information or data on how much that exists. So yeah, any business, whether any industry does participate, but we have to understand the difference between participating or creating an event where it may not be an eco-friendly event, but claiming eco-friendliness and then not being eco-friendly, that is greenwashing. So I'm not very sure of examples where someone has claimed eco-friendliness and not, in news media particularly, but not taken the action. But if there is, I think there are various channels to highlight those also, and it definitely should be highlighted. Everyone's accountable when it comes to climate action, I think. Yeah.
Ramdev and Balkrishna get the Uttarakhand tourism project along with the Adani Great Nicobar project shows how corporate interests gain from the political backing. Yet journalists like Prananjoy Guha face legal harassment. Recently this happened. Why is exposing political interest issues treated as crime while the corporate and political nexus goes unchecked?
Yeah, so why it is treated as a crime is not what I would answer, because you know the political
you know the
situation.
insider thing. So
I don't, yeah, that's not something I can comment on as a journalist, but there is, of course, profit that is leading people to take certain sides or allow certain, corporates to probably gain something. It's a very obvious thing. There is a profit motive. There is a political motive to gain more, space for your ideology. So profit, power, all of those are reasons why someone would, support corporate where there is something to gain versus someone who is looking and, putting down the government, for example. So it does exist, but as journalists, it's what we are trained to do. We're trained to tell these stories. So I think it's important to remember that.
Sir.
Without, taking away a whit from all the very, very valuable things you pointed out, one does notice there's a new trend of verification into the news. For instance, BBC is now styling its news bulletin as verified news, from BBC, as if there was some other news before that. Anyway, but, and in publications, one notices that New York Times, Guardian, President Trump falsely said that, or falsely claimed that. Now, and as it might turn out, what he did say was false, But then that methodology is not there. They are saying that. And in news, we have this old idea about comment and fact being separate. So this seems to be a process, perhaps inevitable, because of the times, where comment is sneaking into news, is kind of, percolating into news in the form of trying to verify, right? This is there. And then you have Trump unfazed says, this is all fake news, which seems to get more traction. So, in other words, there's a kind of truth versus post-truth standoff here. And so media credibility is there on the one side, media following is there on the other side. And I don't know how this is going to play out, but I just wanted to point to this issue which journalists will increasingly have to tackle.
Yes, I think that's an absolutely good point, mainly because, and we've seen it, everyone who wants to be a good journalist cannot keep up with the misinformation and the kind of loud sounds there are, loud noise there is about, discrediting climate action. So there are different techniques that journalists will have to come up with. Like, for example, now it seems normal, but having a social media presence for journalism itself is not something which has been there forever. It's been there maybe the past 5 or 10 years probably. And that came about because journalists realized that a lot of noise was happening on social media. So how do you put out accurate information when everyone is on social media, but you're printing newspapers? So, you know, how does the same person access both the information? So then you start your social media presence so that you're putting out the accurate information where there is the noise. So I think as the information landscape evolves, media and journalism will also evolve to adapt to that. And yeah, there is the difference between commentary and, you know, objective, which I think is something we should still retain, like that line we should still retain, because, you know, as journalists, we need to, you know, I mean, I'm a believer in that journalism 101, old school journalism of, you know, being objective, just stating the facts. But I think there are evolving ways to deal with this information as the whole information landscape evolves. So something new will come up. Maybe there'll be entrepreneurs from this place which will, you know, create some new tools for that. Yeah.
Thanks, Aditi, and thank you, sir, for that important comment. And I'll just take one question from there, and then we also have online questions. So.
My name is Nimisha, and my question is that with a lot of ESG regulations coming around, how do companies get away with greenwashing? Is it just blatant ignorance from the side of the people that are monitoring this? Or is there a different loophole that they're going through?
Yeah, so I think a lot of times there is a loophole they're going through, as in they are required to, say, put out X information. They're doing that, but they are not putting out Y information, which puts X into context. So for example, they'll put out the information of how many trees they are planting, but they won't put out the information of how many trees they are cutting, because it's not required in, you know, certain senses to be put in the public domain. So I think all that information exists. It's for journalists to dig and find that information and make sure it gets the same visibility as the information that they are putting out. So to your question, yes, there are loopholes that are being exploited, but there's also, as journalists, we can hold those organizations accountable because the information does exist.
Yeah, so we'll go to some of the online questions. The first question is from Madhura. While some large groups of people remain in denial about climate change, unwilling to sacrifice their wealth-driven greenhouse gas-emitting lifestyles, within a single lifetime, how can we generate climate literacy among them?
Yeah, so I think, you know, as you know, Dr. Prabhakaran also mentioned that we know this is happening, but would you focus all your energy on one wealthy person versus focusing your energy and funds on building climate literacy and taking climate action among vulnerable populations, among people who are affected and need that help most? And also, I think it's important to, I mean, it's not apples and oranges, right? Like if someone's living a wealthy lifestyle and a fossil fuel company is emitting so many emissions and I'm not living a wealthy lifestyle, I don't think our carbon footprint can be compared, you know, in the same level. So I think that yes, there are people doing that, and climate literacy can be built through the platforms of information that they access. So if it is a goal for you to build climate literacy among wealthy populations, find out the platforms of information they access and look at ways to tap into that. But I feel there are bigger spaces that need our attention and time and money, so maybe that can be put there. Yeah.
Right. So the next is like two connected questions from Nita and Karthikeyan. Nita asks, how can we verify facts in news and information circulating on social media? Are there any websites or softwares or tools that ordinary users can easily access? Karthikeyan asks, how can these videos be quickly verified? Are there any best practices that news rooms use?
Yeah, so there are a lot of tools for fact checking, and I've not gone into tools in this session, but I think the first and the easiest tool that I would recommend, it's called reverse image search. So that is easily available on Google if you have Google Lens, and it's on different platforms as well. So as soon as you get an image which you think you're unsure about, you can do Google reverse image search, and it tells you, if that image was used in a different context. And if it was, you would know that, okay, something shady about this, and you dig further. So reverse image search is one important tool that I would recommend. And for videos, there's a tool called InVid, which again, you can kind of break down the video into images and then reverse image search. But I would say tools are complementary to fact-checking and journalism. They are not the single source that you should rely on. Like, it shouldn't be that this tool will tell me how to fact-check and I'm done for the day. No, you have to find out the source. You have to do your basics of journalism before you get to the tool. And most times, your answers are when you do those first few steps. You ask who the source is. You ask when was this video circulated, where is it from, your who, what, why, how. You'll get an answer in that much in most cases. But yeah, there are many tools which can help you advance your fact-checking as well.
The challenge in recent times has been the use of artificial intelligence to spread misinformation. So the last question from Amrita is about, could you share your thoughts on the role of AI in use to spread misinformation?
Yeah, so that exists. Like the worry about AI being used to spread sophisticated levels of misinformation is real. It is happening. It is recently Sora Sora 2. You can create little videos with any prompt that you give it, and that is a way to create sophisticated misinformation, which is hard to fact check. But as those tools are developing, which help create misinformation, there are also tools developing to help fact check that misinformation. So I think it's a matter of time where you will be able to figure out what is misinformation coming through AI. But I think there'll never be a place where AI will be perfect and it will only tell you the truth. But at the same time, it has its uses. So I would say, going back to conversations around social media, when social media first came about, maybe 15, 20 years ago, Facebook came about, there was so much skepticism that, it's going to cause this, it's going to cause that. And not that that skepticism has gone away, and not that the bad effects of social media have gone away. They exist. But there are also good things that exists, and there is also development of technology for the good of things. And I think same with AI. Maybe we'll know 10 years later, or 5 years later even, there will be enough good with AI to tackle the bad. But it's something we will live with. It's never going to be one or the other.
Yeah, thank you so much. And that was an important point, because as these AI tools develop, there are also tools that are coming up to counter and fact check these misinformation that are being spread online with different types of tools. So overall, this was a very insightful session. Thank you so much. And thanks to the audience and online participants for asking very good questions. Yeah.
Thank you.